Hello and welcome. This is a man called Jay. My real names are Joseph Otieno Adamson, and I am very, very, very happy to have some guests tonight or today, wherever you are, discussing some very, very, very important issues. But first of all, I have to say Happy New Year, everybody, wherever you are. I know in some other regions they have already celebrated the New Year, and some will be celebrating New Year's in days to come. So now, this is security update. Although I'm here just to deliver a message, we know our man David Otto, who will come very soon on the screen, will come to talk about the events that are happening in Africa. But we are going to concentrate on Ethiopia. As you know, Ethiopia has been going through so many challenges, and it is still going through so many challenges. We have covered Ethiopia since throughout 2021. In fact, throughout from 2020 to 2021. I have been on the streets covering events, some Ethiopians, particularly from the Tigray region, on the streets demonstrating. They want their region to be peaceful. They want to make sure that whatever's happening, to stop. But by the way, let me tell you this. Here at AIL TV, or Africans in London TV, we do not take sides. We want to present or discuss issues as mature adults and as how we see it. We do not sensationalize. We actually report things or discuss things. That's what we are here to analyze, discuss, and maybe try to find solutions. So that is a long intro. Let me introduce to you, depending how you're looking at, there is a man in the beard like me, except that mine is white. The man in the beard is David Otto from SISO. Stepped in, step out.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. And then we have got Alex Berhanu. He's a writer, academic, and activist. And then we have Mekonnen Dejene. Am I pronouncing your name right? Now, our topic today, or tonight, is about foreign intervention in Ethiopia. So we know the TPLF and the government forces, they have been fighting it out. But we realize that there have been some foreign forces coming to join the war. That's how I want really to frame it. Now, what we want really to find out, what is it in for them? Are they there to make money, or what is their motives? And how is this war going to go? Because the dynamics now have changed. As always, I'm going to hand over to David. But before I do so, these are the information that I've found out. For example, Turkey is being reported that they are supplying drones to government forces, and also China. Okay, we seem to have lost Mekonnen, but we will come back. Yeah, he's back. So now I just want to play you the video of these drones they're talking about from Turkey. Then we come back, we start talking. How about that?
That would be wonderful.
Okay, fantastic.
Bayraktar TB2. The Bayraktar TB2 is a Turkish medium-altitude, long-endurance unmanned combat aerial vehicle capable of remotely controlled or autonomous flight operations. It's manufactured by Turkey's Baykar company, primarily for the Turkish Air Force. This aircraft is monitored and controlled by an air crew in the ground control station, which includes a weapons deployment. Bayraktar means ensign, or standard bearer in Turkish, and the development of the UAV has been largely credited to Solcik Bayraktar, a former MIT student. The aircraft previously relied on imported and regulated components and technologies such as the engines, missile rack, and optoelectronics. The engine exports have been halted due to attention drawn by their military usage. Of its performance, it can reach a top speed of 220 kilometers per hour with a cruising speed of 130 kilometers per hour. Its communication range features a line-of-sight propagation with a service ceiling of 8,200 meters and an operational altitude of 5,500 meters, and it can endure through 27 hours. When it comes to armaments, it has 4 hardpoints for laser-guided smart munitions with provisions to carry combinations of L-UMTAS, MAML, MAMC precision-guided munitions. When it comes to its operational history, the Bayraktar TB2 was used in 2018 in the Kurdish-Turkish conflict, 2019 and 20 in Libya, 2020 in Syria, and 2020 in Azerbaijan and the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh War. Operators are Azerbaijan, Libya, Qatar, Turkey, and Ukraine.
So, that is the weapon that is being deployed in the Horn of Africa. And mind you, this time we are just only talking about Turkey, but also the Chinese are there too. They are supplying ammunition. So, David, I think I've spoken so much.
Yes,
Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph, and I appreciate that. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have Mr. Alex, and it's also a pleasure to have Mekonnen with us today. We really want to say Happy New Year again to each and every one of our viewers, and it's a pleasure to meet once more and talk about issues of Africa, especially the fact that this is the beginning of a new year, 2022, and we want to talk about those key things, those key elements that mean a lot to the stability of the continent. We know that when we talk about Africa, we know Ethiopia is a giant. We talk about the stability of Africa. We can't talk about that without talking about Ethiopia, without talking about the stability of Nigeria, South Africa. These are the big countries in terms of the economy, but also the social and political stability of the continent. So whenever there is a conflict, as Mr. Joseph has already mentioned, like the one that has been ongoing for more than a year between the government of Ethiopia and of course the Tigray People's Liberation Forces and other partners, as we've said, whether that be internal partners, whether it's the Ola Liberation Army or the Amhara militias, or that be the Eritreans, from neighboring Ethiopia. So you have all these various elements, and I mean, it's very important for us to look about all that. So there are 2 elements here that I think we'll be focusing on today. But because of time constraint, we would really talk deeper on one of them, which is the internal support and also the external support. And what that means is this, when you have a conflict of this nature, like we have the existing conflict in Ethiopia that has been going on for more than a year, you realize that there are people who support the cause. That's the underlying causes. There are people within Ethiopia and outside Ethiopia who would support one side or the other because of the underlying causes. Then you'd also have, elements that would support one side or the other because of the expected outcome of, what the conflict is going to look like. But the third other element is the element of natural interest, which is, countries that will come to support one or two sides because they have an interest in maybe the outcome or the underlying cause of, the ongoing conflict. So when we talk about support here, when we talk about foreign intervention, we're talking about foreign intervention from the perspective of, supporting either the cause or the outcome, or just purely on the basis of interest in terms of how the conflict, will pan out. But as we know, the conflict is still ongoing, and we do understand that none of the sides is winning at the moment. The government of Ethiopia is saying that it has pushed back some of the forces of the TPLF to the region. The TPLF is claiming that this is a tactical withdrawal. So again, that's up to debate. But what we're interested in again is going to be on the aspect of, this foreign intervention. So I think one critical point which we have to make is the fact that, these interventions are not new. It's not the first time that, we're seeing, internal or external parties getting involved in conflict, whether it's in Africa or the Middle East. Again, as I mentioned, the idea or the dynamic of geopolitics is one of the most powerful interests when it comes to foreign intervention. So Mr. Joseph did mention very well and looked at the example of Afghanistan, between the United States and the old Soviet Union, how the United States then supported the Mujahideens, which later became Al Qaeda, to run down the Soviet Union to the point where the Soviet Union had to collapse. So, and then of course today we are having an impact whereby the same Mujahideens have become a thorn in the flesh of the United States, which was supporting them at the time. So what we're trying to look at here is to try and avoid a situation where Africa is going to collapse on the basis of foreign interest and foreign intervention that is based on their own interest. So that is why I think it's very key that we're talking about the issues in Ethiopia today. And as we said, we are not making any judgments. What we're looking at is to look at the critical points of, what are some of the impacts of this support that is being given, or are there any support at all, or is this just a matter of pure speculations? But what we have seen on ground, and the people that we've spoken on ground, and the information that is out there, is that yes, there are countries that are supporting one side or the other. So the question is, what is the interest? So, for example, what is the interest of Turkey? If Turkey is supporting the government of Ethiopia, is this just a bilateral agreement which every government has the legitimacy to make, or is this something that is much more than that? What is the interest of China before now or now? Is it still based on the bilateral agreement? What about the Eritrea? So I think it's important to look at all this from a very critical point and understand, whether this is something which will assist in the solution of the crisis for the government of Ethiopia and the government of the TPLF, or the TPLF group, if you want to call it that, or is this something that is going to make the situation worse? So I think Mekonnen and Alex, would let us look at this from that perspective and see if this is an area in terms of this intervention that is necessary, and whether this is going to solve the problem. What is the role of the United States? What is the role of the African Union? What is the role of the UN? So all these external parties that we've seen along within this period when the crisis has been going on, how have they helped in resolving the crisis? Let's take into consideration the fact that by supporting with military or any financial form of support, is it something that is helping to resolve the problem, or is it something that in the long or short term or in the medium term, it will help to make the problem worse? So I think this is where the critical point, will be. So maybe Alex, I don't know what your thoughts are, but Joseph, you wanted to say something.
No, I'm not saying something. But before we go to Alex, I just want to play you a video clip. I have been following these Ethiopian events, whether it is the other side supporting the government or it is the Tigrayans demonstrating. But these, especially in October last year, I was actually on the street at the Turkish embassy. They were actually, this is the very, very reason of the video that I have shown you. They were demonstrating at the Turkey embassy and the Chinese embassy, all the way to the Russian embassy. So have a look.
Turkey! 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 Stop selling drugs! Stop selling drugs! Erdogan! 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 Stop selling drugs!
Turkey!
Turkey!
Stop!
Stop
selling!
selling
Drugs!
drugs!
Tagaru lives matter!
Tagaru lives matter!
Tagaru lives matter!
Tagaru lives matter!
Turkey!
Turkey!
Shame on you!
Shame on you!
China supports justice in Tigray! China!
China!
Stop! Support!
Support!
The genocide!
The genocide!
In Tigray!
Russia!
Stand with Tigray!
Stand with Tigray!
Russia!
Russia!
Russia! Stand with Tigray!
Stand with Tigray!
Stand with Tigray! Russia!
Russia!
Sovereignty!
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 Does not mean!
Does not mean!
Does not mean!
Does not mean!
Rape and plunder!
So
Yes.
basically, that is, I see, I sometimes ask myself, so these guys are on the street, they are saying things the way they see it, because I don't know how they get the information. But now, according to, once you're handing over to Alex, he will maybe clarify and tell us where the events are now.
Yes. Alex would be coming in, but I was just going to say to Alex, because I'm sure that Alex is going to say this as well. I think it's very important now that you've shown that video for our viewers to understand that when it comes to this relationship between countries like China, Russia, and Turkey, it's very important to know what kind of agreements and when these agreements have been signed, and what the constitution of these agreements are, because countries have the right to sign bilateral agreements, and in order for you to know if there's any foul play, you've got to really understand the details of this agreement. So you cannot just speculate. So let me allow Alex to jump in. Go ahead, Alex.
Instead of Happy New Year to you, all my good participants and followers, to begin with. Instead of jumping to the actual scenario which you have set up, I like to go a little bit back to history. As the Ethiopian saying goes, water is nice from the spring and matter is cleared from the root. So to see these politics we are now in quagmire, I need to see the root, and I want you to share me and with patience. There are two types of guests who come to your house, and there are two ways of their way of coming into your house. The first type of guest is wanted, welcomed, and you open the door for him, for her. The second type of guest is unwanted, and he comes through your weakest point, either when you are asleep or when you are away, breaking in through the weakest part of your house, either through the window or through the back. If he doesn't discover the weakest point, he wouldn't dare come to your house. But when he comes to your house, he has got some 5 baggages, 5 assumptions: arrogance, fear, greed. and thinking that he can overwhelm you. With this assumption, an outsider comes to your house. That's what happened to the slavery in Africa. The European slave traders could have taken many black people, in the way we are recruiting now experts from all over the world, especially from Africa, with incentives, without being harsh and cruel and wild, what they did when they were taking them from Ghana, Gold Coast, across the sea. They could have recruited them with so many incentives. Look, if you come and share us your expertise, your labor, you would get, as rich as we are, you could get clothes, food, whatnot. But they came with the assumption that with their arrogance, that they can subdue and manipulate this semi-beast human being in Africa. And they got the fissure, the weakest points through our own tribal leaders. If our tribal leaders have been looking after their own people, keeping harmony of their society, focusing on their land to enrich themselves and enrich their society, this wouldn't have happened. That's what's happening now at a bigger scale in many ways, in many directions. You call it different, you give it a different name. That's an extension of what has been happening when slavery started in the 15th and 16th century. These people who come now, intervene in Africa, they come with greed, with arrogance, that they can manipulate these poor Ethiopian people. And how did they get the weakest point? They were not invited, obviously. They got the weakest points through our own fissure, through our own weakness, through our own fighting. So the greed tells them, make money at the cost of your brother or sister. So as they have been in the 15th, 16th century, slave traders were immoral. So are these. The slavery has changed its form. It becomes softer and softer and kinder, in quotation. But still they use the gun, the muscle, the arrogance, the greed, the drive, the lashes they used to hit the slaves when they were taking them from Ghana. They are using the drones, bombs, and so many other awful armistic materials which I don't want to list because they hurt me even to mention them. And bombard them where? On the innocent children, innocent farmers, those who could have produced so much coffee and cotton that would be exported to Turkey and the rest. As the immoral slave traders used to do it by force, they're doing it the same way now. So why should we be surprised? It is we haven't waken up the last 400 years that we're repeating the modern slavery in different forms. We have been lured. We have been woodhinked. We haven't been, blinded. We couldn't see that the slavery is continuing in a different form. That's what's happening literally. Do you need me to relate it further than this?
We are having a little bit of a challenge with connections, but let us hope that we are okay. So, David, you have heard what Alex was saying in relation, but we want to come back here to, you see, he has put it that slavery is still in existence, but in a different form altogether. But if I could ask a question, why is Africa not ready to listen to fellow Africans? Or why is Africa not ready to solve its own problems? So, Mekonnen, what is your take?
I think the problems to all these complications are we Africans ourselves. And I would not blame anyone except our leaders, especially in this era. In the past, yes, it was a forced colonization. But when it comes to neo-colonization, or to killing your own people by buying expensive weapons and technology from whoever is around the market, then it is our own fault and nobody's fault. So what's happening in the case of Ethiopia within the context of the Tigray conflict is that the Tigray people, they have sacrificed, as you very well know, for 17 years during their former struggle against the military dictatorship of Mengistu to bring a system where people will have some degree of autonomy, some self-rule, and a constitution that allows people to make choices. Now, what many people confuse this is with sovereignty, because Ethiopia is not a country like, what can I say, for example, the US. In the US, people are mixed up. Everywhere, everybody lives. Ethiopia is different. As all of you have said, Ethiopia has a history of government for a long time, thousands of years, and much of that resided in current Tigray and Eritrea combined, and then it expanded further down to what we call Amhara now and the rest of Ethiopia in recent centuries, and this is a fact. So for me, Ethiopia is like the UK, where you have historical people with their own history and culture and language, and settling in their own geographical areas. So the way you accommodate these people should be different from the way you accommodate the people of the United States. Because the United States is a recent history, people coming from many directions, and people living everywhere. Whereas in the UK, you have the Scottish, you have the English, you have Northern Ireland, and you have the Welsh. You cannot force these people just to merge and to be one, speak one language, one culture, one religion, one everything. That's difficult. So the history of Ethiopia has suffered a lot of conflict and damage by distinct cultures and peoples and their language and their elites trying to assert their position in the Ethiopian state, in the empire, and trying to have some sort of freedom. No, not really independence, but some self-rule. And we know that that was the problem that pushed away Eritrea. The Eritrean question was not handled very well in the 1950s, 60s, 40s, and beyond. And Eritrea separates from Ethiopia, and Ethiopia became landlocked. How? Through a bloody war that we all know. Now, for the rest of Ethiopia, is it better to bring a federal system, or is it better to deny the rest of the Ethiopian people any self-rule?
Yeah.
And bring more disaster, more secession. So that was what TPLF and its coalition, the so-called EPRDF, taught before 30 years. And that EPRDF, as we all know, includes the current government of Ethiopia, the Prosperity Party, which is fighting the TPLF. This EPRDF coalition agreed that we should not lose another Tigray, another Oromo, or another Somali region, or another Afar region, the way we lost Eritrea. We have to allow self-rule. We have to allow some degree of autonomy. We have to allow regional governments to do certain things locally, just like the UK people do.
Yeah.
So because the Tigrayans have paid so much sacrifice, in fact, more than any of the other members, they didn't want this to go, just the easy way. So when Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed took power, and he had these signals of a completely unitary government, and he began eroding the provisions of the federation by, for example, changing the presidents of the regions. For example, the Somali region president was arrested, and somebody was put without
Yeah.
an election. And it happened in all regions except in Tigray. So it was a matter of time that this will happen in Tigray. So the TPLF started to oppose this as unconstitutional ways of doing things, because in the end they will lead to conflict. But unfortunately, the response of the Ethiopian government, or the Prosperity Party, to say, was to crush the government of Tigray by force. So to do that, it has to buy every kind of weapon from everywhere, including the Turkish drones that we know, the Chinese Winglong 2. We have also the United Arab Emirates mobile drones, which are produced in the United Arab Emirates. So we have actually 3 kinds of drones that are playing in Ethiopia now. And it is not about the Tigrayans shouting in the streets of London against the Turkey embassy or not. It is a fact which is happening in the ground, and the Ethiopian government is not denying it. It is openly saying it is using technology. And the damage are registered through satellite evidences and through actual damage that are happening. Those damage can happen to the army of Tigray, and sometimes even to the army of the Ethiopian government itself, by the way, because they
Okay,
miss the
so
targets. And
Mekonnen,
Yeah.
I want to bring in David, and because I have got a question later. So,
Yeah.
what is your analysis here when you hear the story of the Tigrayans and the government forces? So, David, what is your analysis there?
I think what is important again, is to understand the potential outcome of this war. For the Ethiopian government, this is more or less, as they called it in the very beginning, law enforcement. But in practice, that hasn't been so. This is a full-blown civil war that, in a sense, because we've had, international components of it, we've had Eritrea being involved. It's almost like a full-scale war, because again, we are talking about support here, coming from the likes of China, coming from the likes of Turkey and United Arab Emirates, as Mekonnen said. But we're also talking about support from governments that we don't yet know. The way that governments operate is very different from the way that non-state actors will operate. So, in terms of trying to understand how the TPLF is being supported internationally, it is not as clear as one would, have information on what support the Ethiopian government is having. But I can also guarantee you that the TPLF will be having some support, but where that support is coming from, are they just benefiting from the weapons that they are getting from the Ethiopian Defense Forces, or is there something much more than that, in terms of external support? But if you look at the dynamics on ground and some of the concerns that were had very recently, that the coalition between the TPLF and the Ola forces were about 300 kilometers away from Addis Ababa, and the much concern which was expressed by the African Union, the United States, Great Britain, and other countries, they were pulling out their essential staff. It tells you very much that the conflict is at a very, very challenging stage. And, it therefore also means that both sides are getting significant level of support. Now, I know that the operation was changed, when the Ethiopian government, used very high level of technology, as Mekonnen said, to tilt the battle success of the TPLF. But the clear analysis here is that the Ethiopian government does not have the capacity at this point in time to wipe out the TPLF. One, it will be a disaster, and number two, it will be an asymmetric warfare, and that is going to drag on for long. But I also know that the TPLF also does not have the kind of support that it requires in order for it to take over Addis Ababa. Now, in battle, there's one thing, to take over a territory. There's another thing to control it. And there's another aspect of holding it and having legitimacy over that territory. So, from an operational perspective, what I see here is a TPLF that, has the, local capacity, to cause chaos, but not the kind of capacity to hold down the government of, the Ethiopian Defense Forces. So, from that perspective, I think maybe the assistance that is coming from China, that is coming from Turkey, and perhaps United Arab Emirates and other countries, may have changed the dynamics to a positive end. Because what I think, is that both sides may actually see an opportunity to sit down and have some kind of, an agreement in terms of how this conflict is going to end. I mean, I am not speculating how it's going to end, but I think, I don't know if, Alex agrees with me or Mekonnen agrees with me. I think the solution here is to focus on, the capacity of both the TPLF and also the capacity of the Ethiopian government to sit down and have some kind of an agreement as to the best way forward. Now, is Ethiopian government going to stop having support from Turkey? I don't think so. These agreements between states, they would always be there. Turkey would always support. But is buying drones from a country, is that an element of support, or is just business, interest? So all these elements have to be taken into consideration. But what I think from an intervention perspective, what I think is that, we as Africans, we as Ethiopians, we as, mankind, we need to come to the point whereby we can look for a common solution to stop the kind of foreign intervention that would destroy the peace and quietness that Africa deserves. So, Mr. Alex, I don't know what you think, from your own perspective in terms of, how this foreign intervention, how does it look to you? Is it something that will lead to a solution, or this is something that is going to generate more problems?
Okay, in my way of modus operandi, I will go to the root again. Earlier on, you raised a very important question, JJ. Why couldn't African leaders, sort out their own problem? And I will try to answer that one and link it to the present Ethiopian situation. Our leaders, they learn the cheapest thing. I'm sure some of you have read, George Orwell's book. Napoleon, who became the king, started to imitate, Adam, their master, putting clothes, drinking wine, sleeping on bed. That's what they do, our leaders. They can pick easily because their intellect is as low as that pig, as Napoleon. They pick, the easiest things. Driving limousine, going to big hotel, having, special plane. Not how industries are built, how agriculture is improved, how they improve their people's life. No, that's too big for them, for their intellect. But they pick the easy, the simple, glittery things. How to eat cake, how to drink champagne, how to drink whiskey. That's why we haven't come out from the wildest slavery to the modest so-called, slavery we are in. In like manner, this is what happened. The war in Ethiopia is not at all, war of superpowers. As I said, is thieves.
Yeah.
2 millionaires are who are waging this war, actually. Abiy himself is a victim of delusion. They
Yeah.
have used him. The so-called Amhara elites who are intellectually very low, inexperienced politically, are using him. And the Oromos are deceived by the fact that he was born in Oromo, but he is not actually Oromo. His mom is an Amhara, and from internal people who know him well, we have found that his father was an Eritrean.
Alex, you will continue. Now we are still on that question. The question which has been repeated by David, which I raised earlier: why can't Africans solve their own problems? Now let us talk about this man here. Right.
Yes, but that is General Obasanjo,
Exactly.
and former
Now,
president. Yes.
yes. Now, Obasanjo is a military man. He knows. But how come that they have actually singled out Obasanjo rather than actually leaving their matters to the African Union? You see, this is what I want you guys to analyze. Because Obasanjo, he will come up with clever words, but will the Ethiopian government take him seriously? Or will the TPLF listen to him? So let us just discuss this short intervention. We will start with Mekonnen. Mekonnen,
Okay.
are you there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
good. All right.
Okay. The African Union at the beginning had a golden opportunity which it lost. If you remember, at the beginning of the war, and even today, the propaganda machine in Addis was very busy in defaming TPLF and the struggle the people of Tigray were doing, and even their basic question. So the African Union fell into that trap, and it supported the war against Tigray under the cover of sovereignty. Now, because of that, it couldn't involve itself into contributing to the peaceful process. Otherwise, everybody would have welcomed it. And because of that, actually, the African Union and its leader have received a lot of condemnation from every direction, especially from Tigrayan diaspora, and also from the government of Tigray, which was in exile in the bush at that time, fighting. So it lost that opportunity. It is only later when the struggle pushed in terms of its military activities that the African Union started to ask to have some role in resolving the conflict in a peaceful manner. So, okay, that's late, but not bad. So the basic question is, sovereignty has been used as an excuse to murder people. What's happening in Tigray? By the way, I want to, before I forget, I want to mention to David, because I understand he's trying to be impartial, and he should be, but he has to see the context on the ground. In the ground, there is no single way for TPLF to have access to external support, because on the north side, you have Eritrea. On the east, you have Afar region with all the military forces of Prosperity Party. On the south is Amhara region. On the west, even though it is Tigray bordering Sudan, Western Tigray has been invaded and occupied by Amhara and all the other forces until now. So there is no way that any external support could come to Tigray. So we should not try to balance that support is coming to both sides. It could be a matter of lack of information, I understand, that's fine, because we know what's happening more than you guys. Therefore, TPLF and its fighters have completely relied on weapons that they took from the Ethiopian army, without any doubt, and from the Amharan army, and to some extent from the Eritrean army. Therefore, because Tigray has been in siege for now over since June, July, now it's almost over half a year. with no medicine, with no food aid, no electricity, no communication, nothing. The whole Tigray has become a big concentration center. Tigray is now the biggest African Auschwitz, I should say. That is one part. From Tigray itself, the western Tigray is already occupied, and that is 1/3 of Tigray land. And there is a lot of crime being done, including killing people, Tigrayans, from there to
yes,
uproot
Mekonnen,
them. Yeah.
that's very good. We
No, I'm
understand
coming.
all that. We
I'm coming,
understand.
Joseph, to your point. I'm coming to your point.
Right.
Yeah, if you allow me, yeah. So in Western Tigray, there is a lot of Holocaust going on. In the rest of Ethiopia, Tigrayan civilians are put into concentration camps, and the African Union, as an African body, should have voiced this, should have said, these Tigrayans are Africans. Why are we killing each other? What are you doing, Prosperity Party? Okay, war is fine. Fight the TPLF in the way that you want. But don't murder civilians. Don't put people in concentration camps. Allow food aid, allow medicine. And nobody has said this. Nobody has said yet. So the African Union has failed. Africans have failed. In fact, it is with the push of the United States that now Obasanjo has come into picture. In fact, the Trump administration carried the list, but at least the Democrats in the US, they are trying their best out of humanity for me. Otherwise, they have no interest in TPLF and they have no interest in Tigray, because even for the US, Ethiopia, we know that is more important to them than Tigray. But at least the humanity side is pushing them to be a voice and to bring reconciliation. In fact, they are even concerned about the sovereignty of Tigray, and they repeat that 100 times.
Look, the African leaders, as I told you, somehow, some way, by fair and foul means they come to power. But their political knowledge and their intellect is, I told you, is very low. The very few who had very high, intellect and political know-how, like Patrice Lumumba, Nkrumah, Nyerere, you name them, the big, the late ones have gone.
Yeah.
The rest we have now are riffraffs, I can tell you, assertively, from their, articulation, their discourse where they make. For instance, on sovereignty, they speak of sovereignty. Sovereignty is a ploy by less low intellect politicians. Let me tell you how. In the George Orwell, it says all animals are equal, but some are more equal. How absurd is that? Isn't it very absurd? All you are equal, but some are more equal. We recognize Nelson Mandela, who was a terrorist. We were supporting, all African leaders were supporting him. Those visionary and, intellectually rich African leaders. We recognized Mugabe and brought him to power. We supported many leaders who were rebel and were labeled as terrorists by colonialists and by their own indigenous governments. And now, Obasanjo, who claims to be playing sovereignty card, when he knows the history of Nelson Mandela, Mugabe, Samora Michel, Augustino Neto, how they came to power, how they used to be labeled as terrorists by their indigenous government, as well by international community. And he was coming actually to tell the TPLF to hand over their guns and to surrender. Is this an African way, liberating his own people? He is playing the same chieftain who used to play in the 15th, 16th century, selling out their own brothers for the cotton farm in America.
Yeah.
That's what I'm repeating. One more thing. If it is at all they care about sovereignty, what's China doing? What's Eritrea is doing? Is not breaking sovereignty? Is there not observing such thing, sovereignty to Obasanjo? The first question he should raise was, what's Eritrea doing here? Let's go out of Tigray, Ethiopia. And then we talk about peace. What has got Somalia to do in Ethiopian war? He should have asked this first. He should ask the Amharas to stay in their own place and then start negotiation, reconciliation. When you are encroaching in somebody's land, in somebody's farm, serving 2 billionaires, newly made by TPLF actually, by PRDF, who became millionaires the last 20 years. Because of their greed and arrogance, they want more fertile land for their own factory. These all Amhara elites and Eritrean idiots and Oromo immature, inexperienced, so-called elites are supporting this war. Since the aggression of the Italians in 1896 and 1928 up to 1933, that history has been smashed because of two greedy billionaires who want to make money out of their own people, of their own people's blood. That's sovereignty for you, African. Can you ask this question to Abasanjo? If you have any link, David Otto, can I ask you with this homework to ask Abasanjo what sovereignty means and how he is selling out his own people like he's the slave owners of our own land in the 15th, 16th century for Nigeria?
David, respond, David.
Yes, I think, yeah, these are very important points that we are making here. As you both know, and as we all know, whenever there is a conflict within a country, like we've had the situation in Ethiopia, the responsibility, lies within the sovereignty of the state. Now, again, Alex talked about what sovereignty means. And sovereignty from a political perspective, gives the state, the exclusivity or the monopoly to, to sign treaties and to sign bilateral agreements and to use monopoly of force. That is the official position. Now, the question here is the level of force, which has been, made clear that, the engagement between the Ethiopian Defense Forces and the TPLF has been overwhelmingly, unbalanced, against the side of the TPLF. So, where does the African Union come in? There are 4 levels of intervention, as we all know. Where there is a conflict of the nature that we've been experiencing for the past year, the first point of call is the ability of the state to resolve the conflict within its national boundaries. That itself is something that has failed because, of course, the Ethiopian government, the federal government was unable to resolve the conflict peacefully. Now, that is what brought in the second tier of engagement, which is often the regional blocs. That too had failed. Then the third tier would have been the intervention of the African Union. In this case, the African Union, the headquarters is in Ethiopia. So one would have expected that while this conflict was growing on to the point at which it is now, we would have seen the proactiveness of the African Union at a very early stage. But that did not happen. And I think what we're experiencing now is some kind of a reaction, which, comes in my opinion, a little too late, for this intervention by the African Union. This is where the 4th tier of intervention really came in. The national government of Ethiopia had failed to resolve the conflict between them and the regional TPLF. The blocs, had no chance of resolving the conflict. The African Union has failed, and there was no simultaneous engagement in that sense. So the international and foreign intervention, which is usually the last tier of intervention, is also failing. So that is why I think we have to always ask ourselves, do we really have the kind of African Union that Africa needs? Do they really have the capacity to build an engagement or an intervention that will resolve this kind of crisis? And this is where I think the African Union needs to look in the mirror. and say, what are we doing if the headquarters of the African Union can be in jeopardy and can be in this level of chaos? Then what is the faith of the continent, as we approach 2022? So I think these are very important points that have to be asked, and I think that the international intervention is not going to solve the problem. What is going to resolve this crisis is the ability of Ethiopians. And when I say Ethiopians, I mean every Ethiopian, whether you're from the Tigray region or from any other region, you still form the country Ethiopia. This is where I think the intervention of the people really needs to come in, a sincere one. If the African Union can assist, which I think they may be able to assist, then perhaps that might be an interesting route of intervention. But from what I see now, I think the basic expectation is that the Ethiopians need to wake up, and smell the coffee, because the war is not in the interest of any Ethiopian. It's in the interest of all these foreign nations. The interventions favor them. It doesn't favor Ethiopians or Africans, at large. So, Mr. Joseph, go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to respond, maybe to comment on the phrase that Mekonnen said, that he's very happy because the Americans now, they have come in. And I was going to ask, where is America in all this? I can hear a little bit of European Union making a little bit of noise here and there. And I am guessing here, if the situation in Ethiopia, it is actually is worse than what happened in Libya. Now you can imagine Gaddafi was given an ultimatum to leave Libya, to leave his own country. So the reason why I'm saying this, it looks like that America has learned a whole lot of lessons. Because when you look at, David is gone, he will come back. Oh, everybody's gone. So me and Alex now. So, Alex, okay, very good, you're back. Very good. Yeah, what I was trying to say, or the question, let me ask a question now. You have David, you have elaborated everything properly, that the war is not in the interest of Ethiopians. It is in the interest of foreigners, because they are the ones making the money. Abiy Ahmed has spent 51 million pounds buying the drones. Now, just imagine when there is a catastrophe in Ethiopia like this, how many hospitals could he build? He could build roads, but they're not interested. Now, my question is very simple. Where is America in all this? America is very good at playing games. You remember Malcolm X said that the person, he was actually talking about the media. We haven't even gone to the media yet. He said, well, look, do not side with the media that is feeding you lies, because it will turn against you tomorrow. You see what I'm saying? So America is relaxed because America has been in Somalia, things didn't go well. America has been in Libya, there is still chaos there. And now what is America doing is actually giving these jobs, its dirty jobs, to be done by Africans themselves. Don't be surprised that you will see Ugandan forces somewhere in Somalia, you'll see Congolese forces somewhere just fighting American war. So I do not believe that America is really helping. And as David said, this is for me. This question is coming to you, Mekonnen and Alex.
May I start?
Yeah. In my view, I see that Tigray has already made a decision that they don't want to do anything with Ethiopia. They want actually to be on their own. Yeah, is that right or no?
No, not necessarily. Let me answer. Yeah. Let
Okay.
me answer, and because I raised a point, then Alex can supplement if he wishes.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. David raised good points. Let me start from what he said. The Ethiopian government failed to bring peace and reconciliation from the outset. The regional body, which is, for example, IGAD, failed. African Union failed. And now, after even all these voices, after all these genocide talks, and with evidence, it's not just fake news, with evidence, even the UN is failing because China and Russia, they are stopping the UN Security Council from making any kind of resolution. So what is the solution? The solution is to go back to Ethiopians. Yes, ideally it is, and I agree. But in the context of today's Ethiopia, the propaganda machine in Addis Ababa, in Ethiopia, especially in Amhara region, is supporting and preaching genocide. We are not saying this for propaganda's sake, David and Joseph. This is what we hear every day in the news, and this is what the international media is also picking. What would you say if the Amhara regional government publicly, in public TV, says the people of Tigray are the enemies of the Amhara people, the Oromo people, the Afar people, and all Ethiopian people? This is his word as taken, without any modification. And if you want, I can send you the link. Then many other supporters of Prosperity Party also, including the advisor to the Prime Minister on social affairs, saying, and you might have seen that already in Twitter and in Facebook, saying that we should eradicate these people without any history, physically, and even from the mentality of people. We have to erase them. We have to erase everything that comes from them. This is a genocide. One of the billionaires of the Amhara region that earlier Alex was talking, when he was trying to put this hate propaganda into the Amhara youth that were recruited to fight the war, he told them, you should be as harsh as anything, and when you find them, you should cook their meat and eat it.
No, I just really wanted to appreciate, Mr. Mekonnen and Alex again once more. I'll leave you and, let me attend to, this is a very important subject. We cannot leave it halfway, but I'll leave you in very good hands of Mr. Joseph so you can continue and talk about this issue, which is very important.
The war we are waging in Tigray, in Ethiopia, is a war of 2 millionaires, 2 individuals using, few intellectuals, very shallow thinking intellectuals. Well,
okay, so Alex, thank you very much. Now, let us...
One point.
Yeah. Quickly, because we want to round up.
Yeah. The benefit of this war is not even for Russia and Turkey. Turkey and Russia and China would benefit more if Ethiopia had been stabilized, had it been stable and producing goods that they need for their industry. And I've been telling to Americans in my books and in many academic papers, America would be better off to make Africa richer so that their industry products could be consumed by Africans. If Africans come out of poverty, they can buy European cars, they can buy European luxury, they can come to European holiday, they can go to America, Hollywood, to play, cards and games, whatnot. Unless they help Africa to come out and or leave it on its own to stand and tackle its own problem, this vicious circle will not be broken. I've said it this many times in all my academic papers, in all the academic venues I had an opportunity to talk about.
Mekonnen, so we are going to finish up with you. Foreign intervention. Would you prefer that it is African-led intervention that will rectify issues in Ethiopia?
I wish, as I said before, I wish the African Union, and even before that, I wish the Ethiopian government resolved this crisis with its own people in the first place. And if that was not possible, the regional body IGAD and at most the African Union, but they all failed. And even the Security Council, we are watching in our eyes that governments like China and Russia, they are stopping the UN from stopping a genocide, which is happening in our own eyes. And on the other hand, we have governments like Turkey, China, United Arab Emirates, and Iran, which talk about non-intervention in a sovereign government issue, but at the same time selling their own drones to massacre people. So for me, yeah, which genocide has ever been resolved by a genocidal regime is a question. Was that possible in Germany?
No.
Was that possible in Rwanda? No. It was international intervention which reversed those genocides. Because for some reason, individuals and governments go crazy with brainwashing propaganda, with too much hate, as we see today in Ethiopia, in state media, Joseph. In state media. And somebody who said against these things will be seen as the enemy of the state, as a terrorist. Let me give you one example. You might have heard about a singer who was allowed in a public gathering, Tariku, who was allowed in a public gathering in Addis Ababa, and that gathering was meant to condemn TPLF, all right? But they allowed him to speak, to condemn TPLF, and instead of that, he said, let us bring elders and talk to each other rather than fighting and dying. He said, we are all Ethiopians, and we know that our blood are hot, and we will only end up killing each other, and we will not go into a solution. And he almost wept. You know what happened? In the public gathering, people shouted against him, and they asked for his removal. And in the coming days, there was a lot of propaganda in the social media against him, labeling him junta and
whatnot.
We are going to wind up here. It has been a very good discussion. Now we understand. I think we need to keep talking more about unity rather than concentrating on the issues that are going on. We know things are happening. Bad things are happening. But Alex, I'm appealing to you. You are an academic, and I'm going to challenge you today. I want you to find me 10 academic people, 5 from one side, 5 from whichever region you want to. This one, we want now to talk about how do we approach reconciliation. You know, we have just lost our spokesman for truth, Bishop Tutu. Yes.
Sadly.
That is. And you know what? I did a program with him called Speaking Truth. Now, Speaking Truth is going to be our topic, because this one I want it to be in a big arena. Find those people, Alex, let us do it. And thank you very much, as usual. As usual, I'd have to thank you. You are producing this program on the side, because you are finding me people. We are discussing things But by the way, I have to make sure that I have no affiliation with any government in Africa. I have no affiliation with no group for
Neither
whatsoever. Yes, we are winding up now.
Okay.
We are saying that thank you very much for coming onto the program. Next time, we want to have a group of people on a round table. Let us discuss reconciliation. So, Alex and Mekonnen, Thank you very much for coming to on AIL TV. So I will see you soon.
Okay, thank
Bye.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. So that was actually a conversation about foreign intervention between the TPLF and the government forces in Ethiopia. We have more to come. Watch out for this program. Until next time, ciao.
Yeah.